everyone, my name is Melissa from Inspire Me ASAP. In today's video, I want to share with you a lesson about teaching genre, specifically focusing on nonfiction and fiction. I taught this lesson with my own students after finishing up a round of one-on-one reading assessments. It became very clear to me that my students did not know what the word genre meant, but they also did not know how to tell me after reading their book what the genre was and reasons why. The lesson that I taught introduced not only the word genre, but also focused on two main genres. In my second grade classroom, we focused on literature fiction and informational text or nonfiction. I began the lesson by clearly and explicitly stating the teaching point or the objective. Boys and girls, today I'm going to teach you how to identify the genre of a text. Genre is a word that is used to describe a type or a category of a book. Today, referring to our anchor chart, I am going to teach you about literature, fiction, or informational text, nonfiction. I then went through each characteristics that would be considered one genre versus the other, and I explicitly demonstrated in that book how that characteristic is shown in the story. Now for this lesson, I picked books that my students were familiar with, books that we read together. And I also chose books that were the same topic. So I wanted to show books that, for example, they're both about frogs, one fiction, one nonfiction, so they could clearly see how the topic is the same, but the characteristics in the books are organized very differently because they're two different genres. You can certainly have a Venn diagram for that, but for the focus of this video, the only thing that fit was the anchor chart. But yes, you would absolutely be able to do a Venn diagram with this. For example, I would begin by saying, boys and girls, a fiction book is a book that has a clear beginning, middle, and end. Boys and girls, do you remember when we read this book? So referring to a book that we already read, and do you remember what happened at the beginning? And we remember what happened in the middle and how this book ended. It had a very clear beginning, middle, and end. I then might scroll down here to this one, characters and dialogue, and I would explicitly show my students how in this fiction book, there are very clear characters, and those characters, make believe, by the way, frogs cannot actually talk, but those characters have dialogue going back and forth. And let me show you an example of that. "Why are you banging your head against the wall?" asked Frog. "I hope that if I bang my head against the wall hard enough, it will help me to think of a story," said Toad. So those are the two characters, and that is the dialogue for this fiction book. In this fiction book, boys and girls, we must begin reading with the first page and read through each page in order. If we did not do that, this book would not make sense. I have to read this make-believe fiction book in order for me to know what is going on in this story. Illustrations, settings, and the author's purpose to entertain are also different examples that I could give to my students using a fiction book as an example. I would then move over to the other characteristics that would describe books that are nonfiction or informational text. And I would again pick a book that my students are familiar with. So for example, I would state how, boys and girls, nonfiction texts provide us or teach us real information. They teach us facts. This book is about frogs. This book is going to teach me different books about frogs. For example, on page 12, the red-eyed treed frog is nocturnal. Oh, that's in bold. We learned about that in our last unit of study. That's an important word in bold, and the author's actually teaching me how to pronounce that. Oh my goodness, if I look up at my chart, I notice that nonfiction books are teaching me information and facts about frogs, but then also they have nonfiction text features, words in bold, telling me how to pronounce the word. Oh, is that an interesting feature of a nonfiction text? I would then proceed to very briefly go over the rest of the examples of how I know a book is nonfiction text. So for example, I can read this book in any order, and I would demonstrate how even if I'm going out of order, that is perfectly okay. I might want to learn about a high home and where they live up in the canopy of the rainforest, more than I want to learn about a different topic that is in this book, and I can read this nonfiction book in any order. Once students are ready to go back to their seats, so I taught this mini lesson, they're ready to go back to their seats, they then open up their reader's notebook, and inside a fresh new page, they write down 1, 2, 3, however many reasons why they know the book that is in their book nook is a specific genre. So for example, inside their book nook, they have a variety of different books. They would take out one of those books and they would on their own independently identify how do they know that Minnie and Moo Goes Dancing would be an example. How do they know it's a fiction? If the genre is fiction, how do they know that the reason why this is fiction? For example, oh, well, there's characters. And so they would state those reasons why in their independent writing during their independent reading time. The focus is on reading. They write about 2 sentences or so, identifying what the genre is, and then 1 or 2 reasons why they know that that book is that specific genre. In guided reading groups, I might differentiate by actually making a Venn diagram with that student, with that group of students. We might also have different books that we're using in that guided reading group, and they're going to have that lesson differentiated by possibly citing evidence. So maybe I'm asking them to cite evidence, find evidence to support your thinking. So where can you find me an example of what the character said with dialogue in your book? So citing that evidence. If you're telling me that a nonfiction book has words in bold, can you give me an example of that and write that down as your evidence in your reader's notebook? In my next video, I'm going to share with you a really fun and interactive activity that you can use with your students that coincides with what you might have just taught in this lesson. If you're interested in the resources that you see in this video, please click on the link in the description below. Also, you don't want to miss out on any of my future videos, so please make sure to subscribe by clicking on the bell, joining my email list, and then that way you will be notified of all of the new videos that I create, as I do create 1 new video every week. Thank you.